And we will go ahead and get started here. So welcome everyone to the AskGenius webinar, everything you need to know about sending tax receipt letters. I am your host today, Andy Schrader, and I'm joined today by Sarah Aligo and Stacy Cope, also of Pringer Solutions Group. And we're excited to bring another topic in our series here to you as we get towards the end of the year, certainly starting to think about those letters that we want to send to donors that have given numerous gifts throughout the year, those recurring donors and those kinds of things. And really today, what we're hoping to do is to share with you a little bit about how to go about doing that, some tips and tricks and kind of best practices that we have learned. And as we work with our clients, things we advise them to do as well. So thank you all for tuning in. For those of you who do not really know about Pringer Solutions Group, we are based in Omaha, Nebraska, and have colleagues all throughout the country that specialize in a few different areas, fundraising, consulting. We do a lot of annual appeal management, writing, designing, mailing, and those sorts of things for clients. We also do Razor's Edge database administration. So many organizations we know out there are using the behemoth that is Blackbaud Razor's Edge, and so have experts in those areas to assist in the data entry and gift processing. And then we also, one of our newer ventures is the fundraising automation. So using Power Automate as a way to really automate a lot of the processes. And you'll hear a little bit more about that today from one of our Automate experts, Stacy Cope. We also are very proud of a product that we've created in the last couple years and really have launched about a year ago now. Actually, we just celebrated our anniversary, and that is AskGenius. So today's webinar is actually brought to you by AskGenius. It's a product that we're pretty excited about. As you're thinking about those year-end appeals, or if you're already starting to think about your spring appeals, AskGenius is certainly something that can help. We've taken our fundraising expertise and really found a way to leverage the data that you have in your various CRMs to create custom ask strings. So as you look at that pledge card there, many of us use those ask amounts where it's just the standard $25, $50, $75, $100, $250, or $500. We're discouraging you to do that because you're leaving money on the table if you're not asking the donors that have higher capacity or have given at a higher level in the past to fill it out. And so what AskGenius does is simply takes the previous giving along with the wealth information that might be available to the system and allows us to utilize the various algorithms that we've created. So you can see here the secret sauce, nice and easy, and swing for the fences are just a few of the ones that we recommend. And obviously those are based on varying degrees of how aggressive you want to be in creating those custom ask amounts. So if that is something that you are interested in learning more about, we certainly want to be able to encourage you to do that. And you can reach out to us. We're going to launch a poll here and simply see if it's something that you are interested in learning more about. I know some of the people on this call I can see are already AskGenius users, and I think are happy AskGenius users. So pretty exciting for us to have you on as well. And we thank you for continuing to support us and believe in that product. It's certainly helped a lot of our clients to raise a lot of that money. So, wow, lots of responses. I'll allow that to come in for another minute or so. We do have a couple people on here that already raised too much money. So I look forward to attending your webinar next month on how to raise too much money. No, I'm just kidding. But we do appreciate your responses there. And for those of you that are interested in learning more, we certainly will follow up with you after the webinar is over to make sure that you have the necessary information. So thank you. And there we have the results. So there were a few people who are already raising too much money. I can't wait to talk to them after. All right, and moving on now. Wanted to talk to you about some of the previous webinars that we've done. At PSG, really what we try to do is to offer these webinars free of service to kind of give, people an idea of the things that we face, challenges that we face with customers, clients that we work with throughout the year. I know of all nonprofit sizes, big, small, and then the various, health, education, the sciences, as well as the religious sector, which is where a lot of the clients that we work with are from. But the previous webinars that we've done include understanding donor personas, creating the world's greatest pledge card design. And we have certainly helped people to really rethink the way that they are sending those solicitations out and the information that they're collecting. And more importantly, probably the information that they're no longer putting on the pledge card, things that were discouraging people to actually take the time to fill it out. Setting the perfect ask amounts, create fundraising letter samples, improving your donation page, which happy Giving Tuesday. So many of your donation pages are probably getting hammered today if you're participating, if your organization is participating in Giving Tuesday, but really ways to look at that. Leveraging social media. Most recently, we've done direct mail fundraising strategies and using email in your fundraising appeals. And then our most recent webinar we did was proven strategies for year-end giving. So lots of opportunities that we provide, and we're already working on some of our topics for 2023. So certainly be on the lookout for those. But if you do find these webinars helpful, and if you're joining us maybe for the first time, you want access to those previous webinars, you can do that. Simply go to askgenius.com. You can sign up for the Ask Genius fundraising newsletter. Some of you are already receiving that, but it is an opportunity for you to get access to those past webinars. We also provide various updates, tips and tricks, things that as we are made aware of them, we like to share those with people, whether you're a full client of Ask Genius or Pringer Solutions Group or not. This is something that we try to do to advance the philanthropic movement and want you to be a part of it. So encourage you to do that if you have a chance, is to go to askgenius.com and visit and enter your information there. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my friend Sarah Aligo, who is going to dazzle and delight us with IRS rules on tax letters. So take it away, Sarah.
Everybody's favorite topic on a Tuesday, Giving Tuesday. Happy Giving Tuesday to everybody out there as well. So most of you know, if you don't already, according to the IRS, nonprofits must send out a formal acknowledgement letter or a thank you letter to donors who make gifts more than $250. Some of you may be doing this already. Some of you may not, stop at that $250 threshold. You may be mailing them to anybody who makes a gift of any size. But just so legally, that's kind of what the IRS says that you must do. The number one question that we get is, what type of acknowledgement should we send out for these tax letters? So letters, postcards, emails, all are just okay. And really, it comes down to what your budget can handle, right? So if you are a smaller organization with a limited budget when it comes to mailings and postage and all the things, hard copy letters may not be the best option for you. So looking into a more option, looking at postcards or sending out emails to those who you have electronic emails for, those are options as well. And your other option is looking at sending a year-end summary statement for multiple gifts throughout the year. So some organizations that we work with and see around and across the country, they're sending those acknowledgement thank yous after every gift is made, and some actually just hold off to say, let's send you a summary at the very end, because really what your donors want is something for when January comes around in 2023, they're going to have one sheet of paper that says, okay, this is what I've given to your organization. So there's a little bit of few different ways to do it. But whatever way, make sure it works best for you and for the donors that are giving to you as well. One thing to note that you always want to put onto your tax letters, if you aren't already, is this lovely little verbiage here that says no goods or services were provided in exchange for your contribution. Essentially, that's saying that whatever you're acknowledging your donor gave to your organization, they didn't get anything in return. So for example, if they gave you a total of $1,000 last year, that $1,000, 100% of that is tax deductible, and they're able to put that toward their taxes when it comes to charitable giving. But if there are situations that come up where a donor may have received a coffee table book or a T-shirt or something like that, and if you want to click to the next slide, you do want to note that, if the nonprofit provides or you provide a good or service that is greater than $75 in exchange for the gift, the letter must say that. So just be as clear and concise as you can be when you're stipulating what that gift was. If they gave you $250 and they got a coffee table book in exchange that was valued at $100, just make sure that that is very clear in that acknowledgement, so that that $100 then is kind of taken out of that deduction or of that contribution that they gave to you. Just so your books stay clean and their books stay clean as well. So But as you're planning this and all that to be said, before you send out that old tax statement letter, we need to start and take a step back to say, why are you sending this out and why are they receiving it, right? So remembering why you do what you do, right? What does your nonprofit do? What does your organization do that matters, that differs from the organization down the street? Is it that everybody deserves an opportunity, or you're worried about leaving the, tomorrow better for our kids than it is today? Figure out your why, look at your values of your organization, look at the mission statement of what it is that you do, and start there. From there, shift your focus a little bit. You always hear, if you haven't already, the number one thing to do with whether it's donor stewardship or organizational stewardship is making sure that what you're sending your donors, especially through thank yous and stewardship correspondence, is not about you. It's about them. You're talking about how wonderful your donor is, not your organization. So that's what being donor centric is. How does that relate to tax receipts? That can be a little dry sometimes, right? What are they wanting from you? Of course, they want to know how much they gave to your organization, but they also want to know what they did mattered and that they belong, that you see what they did helps put, their values into action. They want to feel good, loved, smart, just as you do with hopefully your other fundraising letters. You're making your donors feel like their gift mattered. They put their generosity into action, and they can do that. And you can do that simply by how you're corresponding with them, especially through letters, postcards, emails, like your tax acknowledgments. So if you've been on one of our webinars before, I can guarantee you have seen this slide. It's one of Nick's favorites. So as you're writing this letter, make sure your donors, as they're going through it, they're reading it and they're saying, yeah, that's me, right? They're saying, I made an impact. I'm making sure, the children in our schools are receiving the tuition assistance or the books and the supplies that they need, right? This is what you want them to do as they're reading through it. As you know, for most, if not all nonprofits, the average age of most of your donors is 68 years old. It's always been 68. It'll forever be 68. And this is how they'll look, right? As they're reading your fundraising letter, they're opening it up. You've already tackled the number one thing that comes to direct mail is getting that letter open. They've opened it. They start reading it. Exactly. Feeling like they're the heroes, right? You want them to know that $100 they invested in you matters. And it matters because it's what is important to them as well. So a really useful tool that we use, all of our content writers here that we work with, is as you start to write your letters, including your tax acknowledgement letters, make sure that you're not writing it for you or even your 68-year-old donors. From a reading level age group, right? It's always recommended that you read it down to about a 5th grade level because you want it to not seem like you just went through your letter, right-clicked, chose some synonyms, and kept going. You don't need it to be flashy. You don't need it to be over the top. You need it to be realistic. You need it to be something that you feel and your donors feel like somebody actually sat down and was telling you a story, right? And so HemingwayApp.com is a really helpful resource if you haven't heard of it before. Essentially what you can do is you can upload your content to it or your letter to it and say, tell me where this is landing. In this example here, you can see under readability, it says grade 5, and it tells you all the great things you're doing. It also tells you, hey, maybe pull back in this area and make some recommendations for you. So definitely check that out as you're preparing content for your tax acknowledgement letter. So regarding the letter itself, again, what are the things that we need? You definitely obviously you have to include what they gave, right? That's the number one thing of what donors are wanting from it. But just as we always recommend with all of our other fundraising letters and webinars that we've done, your letter must be heartfelt and informal. It doesn't need to be short and concise as days of the past. I'm somebody that's been in direct mail fundraising for over 20 years now. And I remember starting out, my number one thing my first boss said was 1 page, short, 3 paragraphs, get in, get out, and call it a day. That's not what it is now. Your donors, especially your older donors, they will sit and read a good story if it's well told, right? So just the high level things, heartfelt and informal, indent those paragraphs. It feels less businesslike if you're indenting it. Bigger size fonts matter. 13 size 13 or 14 is what we see works best, especially for some of your older donors who have a harder time reading smaller font. Don't do Comic Sans. Stick with Times New Roman. Stick with a very clean, simple font. Not a lot ones with a lot of curls on them. They're harder to read. Also, as crazy as it sounds and as ugly as it may seem, underline and bold the words or the statements or the sentences that you feel like are the most important in that letter. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You helped us do this. You're important because of this. 9 times out of 10, once that donor opens the letter, they're going to browse it first. They're going to read through and go, oh, this is a long letter. What do I need to know? Right? If you can catch them and hook them with those bolded and underlined statements to get them to stick around and read it, that will help you significantly. So do that through the letters. You can see in the example here how we've done that. Also, don't be afraid, as I said before, to make it a little bit longer. 2 to 4 pages. 2 to 3 is typically that sweet spot. If you got a really good story to tell, though, break it out and go extend to 4. As crazy as that sounds, your donors will read it if it's well told. Another option is including a Johnson box. So in this example here, it's actually not a box, but in the upper right-hand corner where it says you've made a big impact this year, thank you. It's a call out area that you can add to letters. This can be, you can include variable information in here. You can do anything you want here. You can even add a box around it. Essentially, it's just like the bolded and the underlined areas to say, what's a big important thing we want to tell you? You could also include in your letters, thank you so much. This is your 10th year of giving to us consecutively. And that can be something that you can call out immediately when that donor opens up the letter. And then also, if you have the space, including a PS as well. So as we kind of continue looking at this example, right, this is an example of a really nice, clean tax statement acknowledgement letter, and very simple, right? You use the first page to love on your donors, to tell them how grateful you are for them. And very simply, at the toward the end of it, then you say, okay, here's what you gave, here's a breakout of it, and then you go from there. It doesn't have to be complicated, but it doesn't have to be cold either. And this is a great way to do that. Another thing that we recommend too, just as we do with other fundraising appeals, is just because this is an acknowledgement doesn't mean you can't segment it, right? If you have clean data in your system or data that you trust enough to be able to segment out your donors' behaviors and how they give, do it. These are the top 4 categories we recommend. If you know your recurring donors who are giving to you on a steadfast monthly, quarterly, annually basis, mention that in a letter. Thank you so much for being some of our most steadfast donors who are giving on a monthly basis. We couldn't do it without you. Send a version specifically to them. For your major donors, thank you so much for your leadership support. Some of our top donors who are making transitional and transformational gifts to our organization. We love you so much. First-time donors, if they gave to you in 2022 for the very first time, tell them that you know that. It's very easy, especially in a tax acknowledgement letter, to feel like my $25 didn't really go anywhere. It wasn't a big deal. Did they even notice? Heck yes, we noticed. And here we're including it in the letter, right? So just pull those donors out. It's very simple to do from a data segmentation standpoint. Take the time to do it. The hardest gift to ever get is a second-time gift from somebody. And I can guarantee by thanking them for their first, the correct way, you'll get them to retain and renew for that next year. And then everybody else, then you have that 4th group where they may not fit into one of these top 3 categories, then acknowledge them as you would with the rest of the letter. So, and with that, I know that's a lot of information, but the reality is you don't have to do all of this hand by hand, typing out letters, individually, or even typing out those individual emails. Stacy is on our team as well, and she's going to talk a little bit how you could actually automate some of this stuff so you don't have to spend as much time doing it. So Stacy, do you want to talk a little bit about how that would work?
I would love to. So AcknowledgGenius is the newest division of Pringer Solutions Group, and we are working on using a tool called Microsoft Power Automate to connect to the donor database and then connect to basically the rest of the world. So Power Automate can reach into your Razor's Edge database and find all your donor information, find your gifts, find all of those things. And then we can connect it to all of these other applications. For example, we can send you emails directly from their Outlook or from your Outlook rather than sending it through some other, MailChimp or some other program. Some of these things could get information back into Razor's Edge. If you have SurveyMonkey or Cognito forms, you could take that information and run it through Power Automate back into your Razor's Edge database, basically without ever having to touch it. So we're super excited about the possibilities. The sky is the limit with Power Automate and Razor's Edge. But the most useful thing we found is to be able to send personalized emails from your Outlook to your donors based on their giving in Razor's Edge. So what we've done for a lot of our clients is look for new gifts, and if there's a gift of a certain amount, we'll send a personalized email to the donor, from the executive director's Outlook email, and they can, say, Dear Eddie or Dear Mrs. Smith. We can personalize those with their name and with information about the gift or information about whatever. So it's been super, super useful, and we want you guys to know that there are some awesome possibilities out there. The one I want to focus on today, for the Diocese of Wheeling, Charleston, for Chrissy Benson and Heidi Swartza there, we developed an acknowledgement process for them that runs every week now. And the short version is the letters magically merge themselves and end up in your email box. But they have their database is full of email addresses. They have tons of emails. Donors were asking for emailed acknowledgements, and they were trying, looking to save money on postage with their, normal, as they go along through the year, acknowledgement letters. So what we did is a process that Power Automate goes into Razor's Edge, finds all the new gifts that need to be acknowledged. If the donor has an email address, it will send an email that, has all of the heartfelt content and the gift acknowledgement information, right? So, Dear Susie, thank you so much for your donation of $25. No goods or services were exchanged, etc. All the things, right? So they have their group that gets an email acknowledgement. If a donor does not have an email address, then Power Automate will actually, do the normal mail merge to create a letter for them. And then once a week, Kayla on their team gets this email that says, letters are ready. Here they are in this folder. Here's a link. And then Kayla goes out and prints those and gives them to Chrissy, and she signs them, and they get them out the door. So they're sending way fewer paper letters now than they ever were before, because they're sending so many by email. And nobody has to spend any time pulling lists or actually doing the mail merge. The print ready file just magically appears. So we are super, super excited about that. Obviously this is something that we built for, day-to-day kind of acknowledgements, but this process could be used for your year-end acknowledgements as well, right? We could do the same kind of thing where we go to Razor's Edge and get all the information, and then send out emails or letters based on what's in the donor record and based on their giving and all of those things. I really, all of us remember, maybe this is how you still do it, but back in the day, I remember exporting files with 300 columns because I had somebody that gave 50 gifts. So I had to do 50 gifts worth of information for everybody that I was sending a tax letter to. And, just these enormous, massive files. It was a major, major mailing that we put out every year, right? And it went out the door, left the print shop at 4:30 on January 31st every year, because that's how much time it took to get that file ready and get it all printed and get it all sent. So really, by sending out, I encourage you to look into sending some of these by email this year, because you could get those out conceivably by mid-January. And that you're going to have people that call you on about the 15th saying, hey, how much did I give last year? I'm doing my taxes, right? So if you could get an email out to 25, 30, 50, 60% of your donors, earlier, before you get that letter in the mail, that's going to save you probably a bunch of phone calls. And people are going to be delighted. So, and you would do the same thing, same content as your printed letter with the heartfelt message. You're the best. You make this possible, all of those things. But just do it in an email. So that could be done again through Power Automate, or if any of you are familiar with doing emails through Microsoft Word Merge, that might be a way to do it. If your group is small enough that your email server can handle something like that, that would be a quick and easy way to get some emails out the door this January.
All right. Well, thank you, Stacy. We're going to now, excuse me, we're going to now open it up for questions. And I encourage you, if you have a question, to please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. If you type that in there, we'll do our best to answer those. And if for some reason we can't get to them due to time, certainly we'll reach out to you after the webinar is over. The first question I have here is from Bob that says, how do you suggest handling the issue of when a donor sends you a gift of stock? And then obviously the organization would turn around and sell it. It is advised that we not value the gift. We let the donor know the value in terms of, looks like at the level they gave or the value that we received from the sale. So I think what they're asking is if they're going to acknowledge the value of that stock gift, are they acknowledging it at the kind of the average high-low of the time that the donor gave it? Or are they looking at the time that the organization sold it, and should they acknowledge it there? Or do they need to put a value on that at all? I can speak just from the experience that I have in the various organizations that I've worked at. I think the biggest thing is that it be consistent. So making sure that your organization is always acknowledging those, that either the stock sold or the stock when you received it, that it's done in a consistent manner. Many organizations have different people that handle it. And so it depends on who gets that stock gift in terms of how it's entered into your system and how it's acknowledged. What you are required to do, legally required to do by IRS guidelines, is indicate to the donor that you received, X amount of shares on X date, and, basically provide whatever that stock symbol was or whatever. So you're not required in the gift of stock to acknowledge, kind of the average high-low or those kinds of things in that day. Because one of the challenges that organizations will face is if you do receive that stock and you value that stock at whatever, and the next day before you sell it, the market plummets. When your organization sells that, there's actually the value of that stock that the donor gave has depreciated, and you may need to follow up with that donor to indicate to them that the value of the gift that they gave you on the day is actually now worth this, because if they're taking that full deduction, they may be in jeopardy of needing to kind of amend their taxes, given that the value of that gift is actually less than. So probably to be safest, it probably would be best to simply say that you received 20 shares of AT&T on November the 25th and kind of leave it at that. Allow the donor to report at that point then that they look at the value of the time, or they can reach out to their broker, wherever the brokerage firm might be, to say, I need to know the value of the gift at the time it was transferred. So hopefully that helps. The next question we have here, do you have any tips on tax receipting gifts from funds given via a donor advised fund, etc.? I don't want to be the,
No,
you want to answer that one, Sarah?
No, go ahead, Andy. You're fine.
Okay, so with a donor advised fund, it's I would say donor advised funds and IRA giving is the same. You can acknowledge that you received those gifts. However, those gifts the tax advantages are not given to the donor at the time that they're making those gifts necessarily to your organization. In many situations, the tax advantages to those gifts are actually done at the time they're making the contributions to a donor advised fund. So we want to make sure, again, that we're not double dipping. And so it is important as you're looking at the language that you might put the IRS code language on the bottom of your acknowledgement letters. In many organizations, we do have a different tax letter that would go out to gifts that are received via IRA or gifts that are received via donor advised fund. And I would just encourage you to be aware of that you should not necessarily be providing the tax code language on gifts that are of that nature. Cash gifts, gifts that, checks, credit card gifts, those kinds of things, absolutely, because those are fully tax deductible. But would encourage you to simply acknowledge that you received the gift and the amount of the gift and the date that you received it, but don't necessarily put the tax language on there. All right. Let's see, the next question, what reporting is available for inactive email addresses looking to improve our database? Stacy, do you have any tips or tricks that you want to share with the group there?
Yeah, there are a bunch of services out there for this. So email Hippo is one that we've used that we like, but there's lots out there that will basically check all of your emails to see if it's something that can actually be delivered to, whether there's a person on the other end of that email address, actually reading the email. I don't know if anyone can tell you, but yes, there are services. We also recommend doing maintenance queries on your emails. So have a query that looks for things like email address does not contain the @ sign, or email address contains, gmail.com, whatever, because we see so many of those kind of common misspellings. So you could probably catch a lot of weird incorrect emails just by doing some auditing like that, but also look into email Hippo, and there's bunches of other services out there.
Right on. Next question comes to us from our friend Paula Parrish down in the St. Louis area with the Jesuits. And she's asking, would we actually consider listing the gifts on a postcard? I would say, Paula, from a donor confidentiality standpoint, you want to be pretty careful in that situation. So generally, it's going to be smaller gifts, or maybe it's more of a participatory thing. It might not necessarily have the detail, but for instance, if you have donors giving today during Giving Tuesday, as I hope you have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, you may simply want to send them a postcard. Thank you so much for giving as part of Giving Tuesday, knowing that because those gifts are done online, they're probably getting some sort of automated online gift acknowledgement right away. The postcard would simply be another touch and kind of a further stewardship piece, thanking them, for participating in Giving Tuesday in that situation. So I would be careful in listing the specific detail information on a postcard where others obviously could view that. Probably not safe, and would maybe upset the donor to expose them in that way. But we'd certainly encourage you to use postcards as a touch point, thanking them for participating and probably not providing the detail there.
Yeah, the other thing you could do, Paula, too, is use it as a pre-mailer. It's a very inexpensive things to do. As Andy said earlier, you're going to have and Stacy said, you're going to have donors calling you early January. When are we getting our letters? When can we expect them? You could always send it as a very nice, simple postcard that says, hey, thank you so much again for supporting our annual appeal, or whatever it may be in 2022. Please expect your tax information, mid to late January. Simple as that. So some organizations do that as like a pre-mailer to the actual mailing. Just as a heads up, so you're not getting as many phone calls answering the same question. You could just send that simple postcard to your donor saying they're coming. If you don't receive one by January 31st or soon after, please contact our office. So that's another option you could do too.
Excellent. Next question comes to us from Sarah, and it is, is it required by the IRS for us to remove the tax lingo of these goods and services? So we just really want to be careful on acknowledging the true value, the donor intent of the gift. And so if you are exchanging anything with the donor as part of their donation, that does need to be accounted for in the gift. So, kind of as Sarah said earlier, my alma mater does, kind of a push at homecoming every year, and you can make a gift. And if you make a gift, you can get, like socks or t-shirt or something like that, right? So I know going in that a $50 gift, in terms of what the net gift is to the organization, it may only be $35 because I'm receiving a $15 t-shirt. So the organization needs to know that, one, I sent in $50, that they're telling me that my gift is really the true gift portion of my gift is only $35, and that I received $15 in goods or services. So that does need to be generally disclosed to ensure that the person is not taking more of a tax deduction than what they're actually eligible for in that situation. I guess it kind of is a follow-up to that. If a donor receives multiple items that total over $75 in value, does the letter need to say that, or is it only one single item or service of $75? So Sarah, do you want to maybe expand a little bit on that?
I would just say, as Andy said before, just being consistent as possible. It may require you to have a little bit more merge information or variable information in that letter, but make it as black and white as you possibly can, right? So this gift was given $100. They received a $10 pair of socks in exchange for it. The total gift value is $90. My recommendation would be, again, to make it as clear and concise, even if it takes a little bit longer to nail that down, just to kind of cover your bases and to cover the donor's bases as well. That's why honestly, a lot of organizations have I've seen a lot of organizations go away from kind of that exchange of, you give me 100, I'll give you these pair of socks, because it does get kind of sticky when it comes to situations like this. So some organizations say, you give us $100, 100% of that goes to this. And then the other, the gift and services isn't in exchange for their gift that they made. So just something to consider. But again, from a gift acknowledgement standpoint, I would take the time to really be specific on how you're mentioning that breakout, just to be sure that you can cover your bases.
Right. The next question, if a donor makes an online donation and covers the credit card processing fee, do we need to include that anywhere in the acknowledgement letter? This is something that certainly is becoming more and more prevalent as CRMs like Blackbaud, and some of these other online payment processors are allowing donors to cover fees. At the end of the day, and kind of how we've looked at it is, if the donor makes a $100 gift, but then covers, call it $4.25 in credit card processing fees, you can acknowledge that whole $104.25 because it is offsetting the expense to your organization. So the amount of the true amount of the gift that the donor is giving is $104.25. $100 may go to your annual appeal fund or whatever. Essentially that $4.25 is a restricted gift to cover the credit card processing fees. So it is a gift that will cover a specific expense, or operating expense for the organization. So we certainly encourage you to acknowledge the whole gift because the donor, and we've had this happen again, as some of these changes by some of these platforms have happened early in the year, where a donor will call saying, hey, I received a thank you letter, but it only says $100, but I'm looking at my credit card receipt and it says $104.25. What happened to the $4.25? And so, it really, we would encourage you to include the whole amount of that gift, so the whole $104.25 in our example. Some organizations have gone on to kind of break that out and really in kind of a detail, say it was $100 and then it was $4.25, or to even in the copy of the text say thank you for your gift of $104.25, which supports our organization and the fees associated with your gift, so that the donor has a sense of the fact that you see that gift paid for both their gift as well as the processing. But certainly would encourage you to acknowledge the whole gift amount, including the credit card processing fee, if they did in fact donate it to you. Otherwise, again, your back office people are going to get a lot of calls or emails with, hey, where's the rest of my gift? You need to send me an additional acknowledgement letter for $4.25. Next question. Does anyone, do we know of anyone that provides a pay method as part of their gift acknowledgement? So if they give by check or if they give by credit card, acknowledging that on the receipt as part of the gift. So thank you for your gift of $25. Your check was received on X and that, such and such a date. One of you want to share any thoughts on that?
Yeah, all of the acknowledgements that I do with organizations right now, we do not include that information. But we do recommend, if you have any questions about your gift or you need further information, please contact our office. That's what my recommendation is not necessarily including that. You could say in that letter, thank you for your one-time gift or your recurring gift or your pledge. That's what, I would handle it that way, but I wouldn't get down to the nitty-gritty of you made by credit card, you made by ACH, because then it just gets kind of messy. So allow them, if their CPAs do require that, have them, give them the option, the phone number, the email to contact your office, but I wouldn't put that in the letter.
Right on. The next question I may have Stacy answer, just so you can kind of provide some input. What is the proper way to acknowledge matching gifts in terms of, to the donor, to the matching gift organization?
So the matching gift donor, that means you will have had a normal gift from your donor, right? And then their organization will match it. So on this tax statement that they get, the donor will see their original gift, right? The $100 that they sent you. The $100 that came from their organization will not be on their tax receipt because it is not part of your donor's regular giving. If you wanted to notify the donor that your matching gift from your company has been received, that is definitely advised. I would not do that as part of your tax receipt year-end stuff. I would do that when it arrives. Have some sort of a form letter that goes to the original donor saying, thanks so much for your, original gift. We wanted to let you know that we got your matching gift, doubling your gift, you're amazing, all of those things. So I would not include the matching gift itself at all on a donor's tax event.
Right, and we have one last question, and Candy, I think set my transition up perfectly here. Do you have any samples of letter layouts in Word for merging? She's having a hard time kind of setting up a list of gifts and incorporating it into the letter. And so I guess that, like I said, leads me to kind of what's going on. So as part of this webinar today, we're in the giving mood, as it is Giving Tuesday, of course. But want to kind of let you know what's going to happen after the webinar today. So certainly encourage you to check your email. We're going to provide you a webinar recording of this. We're going to link the download to the slides, the template, the text letter template. So that's again what Candy just asked for. So kind of giving you a sample of what we were able to flash up there on the screen earlier. And then for those of you that had inquired more information about AskGenius and kind of knowing what that product can do, how it works, and if you have any interest in that, to be able to set up a demo. And then, of course, the links to some of our prior webinars and resources, the pledge card design, as well as the donor personas. So lots of goodies here as you look to end out this year, hopefully on a high note, and as you begin planning, if you haven't already, for 2023. Being able to have some of those tips and tricks that some of the things that we've discussed, but also things that we've covered in previous webinars, want to make sure you have everything in your toolbox to be as successful as you possibly can. So I do not see any further questions.
Andy,
So
there are a couple of questions in the chat. Do you want to address those super fast?
I'm sorry. Yeah, well, let's pull that up here. Holy cow. There are many.
Yeah. Let's start at the bottom. Is the donor's full home address required in emailed tax receipts? I do not believe so, based on the IRS requirements. Never hurts to throw it in there if you can, but yeah, that should be, mostly you need to provide information about your organization, and the rest of it is on the donor.
Okay, the next one is, let's see here. It looks as though it kind of addresses from Rachel here. She's received receipts for the purchase of raffle tickets in the past, which are not gifts, and that is correct. They're not tax deductible, but that could be classified as you made, whatever, you bought a $50 or you bought a $100 raffle ticket, and the goods and services that you received were $50 or $100. So you certainly can acknowledge, that you received that the transaction, the money from a donor. But again, that's one of those examples that Sarah kind of shared earlier, that we then need to disclose that the goods and services that were received by the donor was a $50 raffle ticket or a chance or whatever, because that is not tax deductible. Okay, so I think we answered that one. So here's a kind of an interesting question, and I believe this is particularly at this time of the year, it's a little tricky. Is the date the gift was received required? And so when we look at the date on putting the date of the gift was received on the letter, versus in some situations people will use the deposit date from the finance office. Some people will use the postmark date on the envelope. Some people will use the check date. Again, I think, the biggest thing is, from a consistency standpoint, when it comes down to the end of the year, typically organizations will honor the postmark date. So as lots of organizations close between Christmas and New Year's and, those kinds of things, and you want to get those year-end, kind of tax gifts in by December 31st, as long as your organization has them, like I said, receive the postmark date of December 31st, you should be able to honor those in that given tax year. That also, kind of becomes tricky too for online donations, and making sure that your organization is looking at timestamps of when those gifts were received. Maybe there was a very generous donor that, was waiting until the ball dropped in Times Square or something like that to make that gift. And, they may be a minute or two late. So, really use your best judgment in those situations, but really looking at donor intent, and kind of throughout the course of the year, there's probably a little bit more wiggle. Where that gift date becomes a lot more critical is obviously at the end of the calendar year here, and as you kind of transition into the next year. So do we have, I'm just kind of looking here at other ones. Thank you, Amy, giving us some love here. She's an AskGenius user. This is actually one of our first. Our friend Tanya in Houston also gives us a shout out. So I think that we have we've done our best. We'll look through the chat, and if there are other questions that we missed, we'll try to follow up individually with those people. So again, want to thank everybody so much for joining us today. We wish you again a happy end of your Giving Tuesday today, and certainly wish you a very successful fundraising month in the month of December, when we know that that's when the majority of the gifts come in, and we work a lot of late hours, but we do so for the purpose and for the reason, as Sarah said earlier, that's the why that we can all put in our letter. So that's the why we do it. And the stress and the lack of sleep is worth it, because we're changing the world one day at a time. So again, thank you all for joining us today. We wish you well, and be looking for that email hopefully later today with all the information that we're ready to share. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.